Hello Internet. Now that we're getting some solid casting news about the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so it's definitely going ahead and definitely going to happen, I thought it would be a nice time to pause and take stock of the mess that is the current Texas Chainsaw Massacre continuity. It's been amusing me recently after the rumours and then announcements about Neil Blomkamp's pitch for a new Alien movie, and the internet going wild with rumours about whether or not he was going to completely disregard Aliens 3 and 4 and it going to be a true sequel to part 2, or how is he going to weave it in, or will he just ignore part 3 because part 4 is set so far in the future, and people are tying themselves into all sorts of knots, and us horror fans can sit back and chuckle because we're more than familiar with this and more than comfortable with it. H20, not H2O, it's not called water, it's H20, 20 years later, chose to willfully ignore, despite being the 6th film in the Halloween franchise, everything after part 2. Part 3 gloriously ignored absolutely everything else. Parts 4 and 5 ignored the fact that Michael had been shot through both eyes and burnt to a crisp and was dead at the end of part 2. So this is familiar bread and butter for us, but no franchise is as eager to ignore and trample over and cannibalise, pun intended, films that have gone before it than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. So, to bring everyone up to speed before the new movie Leatherface, let's have a little pop quiz reminder of Texas Chainsaw Massacre continuity. And I'm going to have to refer to notes. 1974. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, of all the films that get written out of revisions and remakes and the like, this is, in all of the continuities, this is the closest we'll get to a fixed point in time and space. Apart from remake territory, every film agrees that the first film happened. After Texas Chainsaw Massacre, directed by Tobe Hooper and co-written by Tobe Hooper and Kim Henkel, quite a few years past, 1986 brings us the Tobe Hooper directed and Ellen Kit Carson written Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And this is really simple. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is a true sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It follows on from it. A few years have passed. The opening crawl to this, the opening narration, directly references events to this movie and victims in this movie. Sequels. Then, in 1990, after New Line acquired the rights, comes Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. It's 3, so it should go 1, 2, 3, right? Wrong. Leatherface ignores 2, I would argue. Some of these get a little fuzzy, especially once we get past number 3. Fans will know what I'm talking about. But the opening narration to this directly references this. It directly references Sally and Franklin Hardesty, and it, good lord, it says that one person from the family faced trial and died in a gas chamber in 1981, and that jurors assumed that Leatherface was one of the personalities of W.E. Sawyer, the only person to be caught and prosecuted. So, one of the members of the family from this, according to the narration of this, was caught, faced trial and was executed in the gas chamber in 1981. This ignores the fact that at the end of this, Leatherface essentially is killed. He gets a massive chainsaw through him. I would argue that this ignores part 2 and acts as its own true sequel to part 1. Leatherface wears a leg brace in this, which I think is a nod to the chainsaw wound he takes to his leg at the end of this. So there's another continuity. By the way, this film, which is amazing and a brilliant sequel, is the most ignored out of all the sequels. There are 3 movies, I would argue, trying to be true sequels to the first one. 4, perhaps, because now we're moving on to 1994's Kim Henkel written and directed. So the guy who co-wrote the first one now writes and directs Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, or I think it's also known as Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This film is insane. But the opening crawl narration to this mentions the original and says, regrettably, not one of the family members was ever apprehended. So completely denying the narration of this. But it does also say, since 1994, nothing was heard for 10 years. Then 2 minor yet apparently related incidents were reported, which is a tongue-in-cheek reference to parts 2 and 3. They're apparently related, but now we get the real deal. And this is a true sequel to this. Also a kind of quasi-remake. Thank God the term reboot wasn't around, because I'd have said reboot quite a lot by now. In 2003, Platinum Dunes, our favourite polishers of turds, acquired the rights and made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Flat out remake. Brand new continuity, brand new timeline, new Texas Chainsaw universe. And 6 years after that, in 2006, they made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning, a prequel. Boom. That's simple. This also gets completely ignored by 2013, where Texas Chainsaw 3D... Yes, I bought it. I've got a... What am I going to do? It says Texas Chainsaw on it. I've got a 3D TV. I had to check it out. Texas Chainsaw is back in the original continuity, but ignores this. Ignores this. Ignores this. And is the one and true sequel to the original movie. It goes so far as to start with footage from this movie and then cuts to new footage still set in 1974, where all of a sudden there are like dozens more family members in the house, and there's a baby who grows up to be the protagonist in this, a young lady who's related to the cannibal family and Leatherface. The only trouble with that, which is a kind of cute idea, is that they affirm that all of this happened in 1974. They don't contradict that, but then they say that this happened in 2012, which is maths, 20, 32, 38, 36, 38 years later. 38 years have passed. Now it's definite, in this movie, it's definitely set in 2012. And she was a baby, definitely in 1974. And somehow she's managed to sidestep an entire decade, because she's definitely in her 20s in this. It's an absolute fucking insult, and I wish I could throw it away like that. But the next... Oh, I better get it back, sorry. Because the next movie is going to be called Leatherface. And not this Leatherface. It's going to be a prequel. It's going to be a prequel to this movie. It's set in the same continuity as this movie. And it's going to be about a young Leatherface. So, there you go. Short but sweet, hopefully informative. If you're none the wiser and can't decide whether to go and see the new Leatherface movie when it comes out, then I suggest you take your cue from me and know that you're going to hate it, and it's more than likely going to be shit, but you'll see it eventually anyway. And if you're a completist like me, depending on how thoroughly bad it is going to depend on how long you wait and how big a price drop you're prepared to wait for until you buy it, so that it's actually part of your collection.